On the day I buried my mother, my husband threw my belongings onto our lawn like trash. I'm Dorothy Mae Johnson, 68 years old. I stood there in my funeral dress, watching my clothes trampled into the grass, and I said, "Okay." Then I walked away to the house he didn't know I owned. But let me start from the beginning, because this story spans 42 years, 8 months of careful planning, and one afternoon that changed everything. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. And please, stay with me until the end. My name is Dorothy Mae Johnson. I'm 68 years old, and for most of my life, I've been invisible. The kind of invisible that happens to Black women who marry doctors, who give up nursing careers to raise children, who smile at country club events while their mother-in-law whispers that they'll never quite fit in. The kind of invisible that makes people assume you have nothing, are nothing, without the man beside you. Richard Coleman thought I was invisible too. That was his first mistake. His last mistake was throwing my things on the lawn while I was 300 miles away, holding my dying mother's hand. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 42 years ago, in 1982, I met Richard at Memorial Hospital where I worked as a surgical nurse. I was 26, saving for graduate school, living in a studio apartment in the city with my best friend Keisha. Richard was 28, a third-year resident in orthopedic surgery with perfect teeth, perfect ambition, and a perfect smile that made my stomach flutter. Our hospital had just integrated its surgical staff. I was one of 3 Black nurses in the entire department. Richard didn't seem to care about that. He asked me out after a particularly grueling 12-hour shift, took me to a small Italian restaurant where he spoke about his dreams, private practice, research, making a difference. He asked about my dreams too. Actually listened when I talked about becoming a nurse practitioner, maybe opening a clinic for underserved communities. "We could do that together," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "Build something meaningful." I fell in love with the vision as much as the man. His family was another story. Barbara Coleman, Richard's mother, was 62 years old with silver hair she wore in a pristine bob, pearls she never removed, and a smile that never reached her eyes when she looked at me. The first time Richard brought me to their home, a sprawling colonial in Glen Haven Estates, she answered the door, looked me up and down, and said, "Oh, you're darker than I expected." Richard laughed it off. "Mother, don't be rude." "I'm not being rude, darling. I'm being honest. Honesty is important in family, don't you think?" She turned to me, that smile still frozen on her face. "Dorothy, is it? Such a sturdy name." I should have run. Keisha told me to run. "Girl, that woman looked at you like you were something stuck to her shoe," she said when I returned to our apartment that night. And Richard just laughed? "No, ma'am. No, thank you." But I was 26 and in love, and Richard said it would get better once we were married, once his mother got to know me, once I proved myself. So when he proposed 6 months later with his grandmother's diamond ring, I said yes. The wedding was small. Richard said his family preferred intimate gatherings. The truth, I learned later, was that Barbara had told relatives not to come. I simply cannot endorse this choice she'd written in a family letter I found years afterward. But Richard is determined, so we must make the best of a difficult situation. My mother, Rosa May, traveled up from Alabama for the ceremony. She pulled me aside before I walked down the aisle. "Baby girl," she said, holding both my hands, "you sure about this? That woman looks at you like you're stealing something from her." "Mama, I love him." "I know you do, but does he love you enough to stand between you and her?" I didn't have an answer. I walked down the aisle anyway. The first 5 years weren't terrible. They weren't good, but they weren't terrible. Richard was building his practice, working 18-hour days. I got pregnant with Michael 9 months after the wedding, then Jennifer 2 years later. Barbara appeared the day I brought Michael home from the hospital. "Well," she said, peering at my brown baby with her blue eyes, "at least he has Richard's nose. That's something." Richard wasn't there to hear it. He was at the hospital. He was always at the hospital. "You need to stop working," he told me when Michael was 6 months old. I was picking up part-time shifts, trying to keep my nursing license active. "It doesn't look right, Dorothy. The wife of Dr. Richard Coleman working night shifts like we need the money." "But I like working. I'm good at it." "I'm not saying you're not good at it. I'm saying it's not necessary. We don't need your income, and honestly, it's embarrassing. My colleagues' wives manage their homes, support their husbands' careers. That's what I need from you. I quit 3 months later when Jennifer was born. Richard said it was temporary, just until the kids were older. But when Michael started kindergarten and I mentioned going back to nursing, Richard shook his head. The children need you home, Dorothy. Besides, you've been out of the field too long. It would be like starting over. Why put yourself through that? So I didn't. I became the perfect doctor's wife. I joined the hospital auxiliary. I planned fundraisers. I smiled at Barbara's friends when they asked me to chair the diversity committee. You'd be perfect for it, dear. As if that wasn't exactly the kind of tokenism that made my jaw clench. I lost myself so gradually I didn't notice it happening. By our 10th anniversary, I had no career. By our 20th, I had no friends. Richard said they were negative influences or trying to drive a wedge between us. By our 30th, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. I'd become a shadow, a well-dressed, well-spoken shadow who organized charity events and pretended not to hear when Barbara told other women, "Of course Richard married beneath him, but he does his best with what he has." The thing about being invisible, though, is that invisible people see everything. 8 years ago, when I was 60 years old, everything changed. Not all at once. That's not how these things work. It happened in small cracks, tiny fissures that gradually split open until I could see the truth beneath the perfect surface. It started with a phone notification. Richard and I were having breakfast, one of the rare mornings he wasn't at the hospital early. His phone was on the table between us, face up. A text message preview appeared. "Last night was amazing. When can I see you again? Angela." I watched the message appear, watched it sit there between us like a living thing. Richard grabbed his phone so fast he knocked over his coffee cup. "Colleague," he said, dabbing at the spill with his napkin. "Angela Carter, one of the nurse practitioners at the office. We had a late meeting about patient scheduling." "At night?" "The only time that worked with everyone's schedule." He stood, kissed the top of my head. "I've got to get to the office. Don't read things into innocent messages, Dorothy. It's not attractive." I sat at that table for an hour after he left, staring at the coffee stain spreading across the white tablecloth. Something in me clicked. Not broke. Clicked. Like a lock turning, a door opening. I called Keisha for the first time in 3 years. Richard had convinced me she was bitter about her own divorce and trying to poison me against him. I'd believed him. "Dorothy?" Her voice cracked with surprise. "Girl, is that really you?" "It's me, Keisha. I think Richard's cheating on me." Silence. Then, "Honey, I've been waiting 20 years for you to see what everyone else has been seeing. Come meet me. Right now." We met at a coffee shop across town, far from anywhere Richard or his colleagues would go. Keisha had aged beautifully. Silver locks, laugh lines around her eyes, a confidence I remembered but had somehow lost myself. "Tell me everything," she said. I told her about Angela. About the late nights Richard claimed were emergency surgeries but didn't match the hospital schedule online. About the credit card statements I'd glimpsed showing hotel charges, restaurant reservations for 2 at places we'd never been together. About how small I felt, how stupid, how invisible. Keisha listened until I ran out of words. Then she reached across the table and took my hands. "Dorothy May, you are not stupid. You've been surviving. There's a difference. Now the question is, what are you going to do about it?" "I don't know. I have nothing, Keisha. No career, no money of my own, no—" "Stop. You have something much more important. You have intelligence and time. Use both." "What do you mean?" She leaned closer. "Document everything. Every late night, every unexplained expense, every lie. Take pictures of documents. Open your own bank account, one he doesn't know about. Start building a safety net. Because if Richard is who I think he is, he's not just going to let you go quietly when he's done with you. Men like him never do. I'm 60 years old. I haven't worked in 34 years. Who's going to hire me? How would I even start?" "You start small. You start invisible." She smiled. "Isn't that what you've been for 40 years? Time to use it as a superpower instead of a prison." I went home that day and did something I hadn't done in decades. I looked at myself, really looked, in the mirror. Saw the gray in my hair I'd been dutifully dyeing away at Richard's insistence. Saw the expensive clothes I wore because Barbara said a doctor's wife must maintain standards. saw the woman I'd allowed myself to become, and I decided that woman was done. The next 2 years were the hardest and most liberating of my life. I became a student again, but this time I was learning how to save myself. I started with the small things. Richard gave me a household allowance, $2,000 a month for groceries, household items, personal expenses. I'd always spent every penny, terrified of appearing wasteful or ungrateful. Now I became frugal. I shopped sales, used coupons, bought generic brands. I saved $300 to $400 each month, hiding cash in a tampon box under the bathroom sink. Richard never looked there. I sold things online, clothes I'd bought but never worn, jewelry Richard had given me over the years, household items we didn't need. I listed them from the public library's computer, used a P.O. box for shipping, made almost $8,000 in the first year. But my real education came from an unexpected source. Her name was Evelyn Washington, and she lived 3 houses down from us in Glen Haven. 75 years old, sharp as a tack, and wealthier than anyone knew. I'd seen her at neighborhood events, but never really talked to her. Barbara had made it clear that Evelyn was new money, not really our sort, you understand. Evelyn approached me at a garden club meeting when I was 61, walked right up, looked me in the eye, and said, "Dorothy Coleman, you and I need to talk." We met at her house the next week. Her home was smaller than ours, but beautiful, filled with art, books, life. She poured us tea and got straight to the point. "I know what you're going through," she said. "I can see it. Your husband's cheating, probably has been for years. Your mother-in-law treats you like help. You've got no money of your own, no escape plan, and you're terrified. Am I close?" I sat there, teacup trembling in my hands, and nodded. "Thought so. I've seen this before. Hell, I lived it. 30 years I spent with a man who controlled every penny, every decision, every breath. You know what I learned? Men like that, they count on us being too scared to leave, too loyal to protect ourselves. They count on us being stupid." "I'm not stupid," I said quietly. "No, you're not. But you've been acting like you are. That stops today." She set down her teacup. "I'm going to teach you everything I learned. How to hide money, how to build credit in your own name, how to document assets, how to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. You interested?" "Why would you help me?" Her eyes got distant. "Because nobody helped me. By the time my husband died, I discovered he'd gambled away most of our money, drunk the rest, and left me with nothing but a house I couldn't afford to maintain. I had to rebuild from nothing at 65 years old. Took me 10 years to get where I am now." She focused on me again. "You've got time, Dorothy. Use it." For the next 6 years, Evelyn became my teacher, my mentor, my friend. She taught me about money, real money, not the allowance Richard doled out. She taught me about assets, investments, property ownership. She loaned me books about financial planning, divorce law, asset protection. We met twice a week, always at her house, always when Richard was at work. "First rule," she said during our 3rd meeting, "open a bank account he doesn't know about. Different bank entirely. Use your mother's address for statements." I did. Opened an account at a credit union downtown, used Mama's address in Alabama. Started depositing my saved cash, $50 here, $100 there. It took time, but it grew. Second rule, document everything. Every asset, every account, every property. You're going to be shocked what you find. She was right. I started carefully, taking pictures of documents when Richard was out. Our tax returns, the ones he had me sign without reading. Bank statements left in his study. Property deeds. Business papers for something called Meridian Medical Holdings, LLC, registered to Barbara Coleman. I created email accounts Richard didn't know about. Uploaded photos to secure cloud storage. Built a digital trail of evidence, piece by piece. Third rule, build your own skills. You've been out of nursing too long, but what else can you do? I don't know. Then figure it out. You're 62 years old, not dead. I started taking online courses. Basic accounting, bookkeeping. Told Richard I was learning to make sourdough bread or some other domestic hobby. Instead, I was learning about financial statements, asset valuation, forensic accounting. Within a year, I'd gotten a certificate in bookkeeping. Started doing books for a few small businesses, cash payments only, work done from the library computer. It wasn't much, $800 to $1,200 a month, but it was mine. More importantly, it was proof I could support myself. By the time I was 64, I had $28,000 in my secret account, a skill I could use to earn money, and a growing file of evidence about Richard's hidden assets, but I still didn't have anywhere to go. "You need a safe place," Evelyn said during one of our meetings. I was 64, and we were reviewing my evidence file. Now hundreds of documents showing properties Richard owned through shell companies, offshore accounts, money transferred systematically over years. I have money saved, but not enough to rent anywhere decent, not without Richard finding out. "So don't rent, buy," I laughed. "With $28,000? Have you seen housing prices? Have you looked outside Glen Haven?" She pulled out a real estate listing. "Lakewood, 30 miles from here, different county entirely. I found this yesterday. 2-bedroom craftsman, needs work but solid bones. $185,000. I don't have that kind of money. But I do," she smiled. "I'll loan you the down payment. Call it $40,000. You get a mortgage for the rest. Use your bookkeeping business as proof of income. Set up an LLC as the buyer. Richard will never know." "Why would you do this?" "Because I wish someone had done it for me." She pushed the listing across the table. "This is your insurance policy, Dorothy. A place that's yours, that no one can take away. You don't have to live there yet. Just know it's there when you need it." It took 3 months to set everything up. I created an LLC called Mitchell Property Holdings, using my mother's maiden name. Applied for a mortgage using my bookkeeping income and the loan from Evelyn as down payment. The bank approved it. Barely. The property was in foreclosure, needed cosmetic work, but it was structurally sound. I bought it on December 15th, 2020. I was 64 years old, and for the first time in my adult life, I owned something that was mine alone. I told Richard I'd joined a book club that met Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Instead, I drove to Lakewood. Spent hours cleaning, painting, making the house livable. Bought furniture slowly from thrift stores and estate sales. Told Richard I was donating our old things to charity, but actually moved them to my house. I planted a garden. Installed a security system Evelyn helped me choose. Made the house a home. The neighborhood was different from Glen Haven. Working-class families, diverse, real. My next-door neighbors, Patricia and James Morrison, were a retired couple who welcomed me warmly. "Just managing the property for an out-of-state owner," I told them. They never questioned it. Across the street, Maria Rodriguez ran a small daycare. She'd wave when she saw me working in the yard. "You're doing beautiful work," she called one afternoon. "The owner is lucky to have you." If only they knew I was the owner, that I was building a life here, slowly, invisibly, while still playing perfect wife 30 miles away. By the time I turned 66, I'd been building my evidence file for 4 years. What started as a few suspicious phone messages had become a comprehensive map of Richard's deception. I'd discovered accounts in the Cayman Islands totaling $4.2 million, property owned through Meridian Medical Holdings, 3 commercial buildings worth approximately $8.9 million. A vacation property in Aspen registered to Barbara, but paid for with funds traced back to Richard's practice. But it was Gloria Patterson who helped me understand the true scope of Richard's crimes. Gloria was a private investigator, recommended by Evelyn. 52 years old, former police officer, specialized in financial crimes. I hired her with money from my bookkeeping business, paid cash for discretion. "Mrs. Coleman," she said after her first month of investigation, "your husband isn't just hiding assets. He's committing insurance fraud, possibly Medicare fraud. I'm seeing patterns in his billing that are concerning." She showed me what she'd found. Procedures billed but never performed. Upcoding, billing for complex surgeries when the actual procedure was simpler and cheaper. Patients' insurance information used for services they never received. "How much are we talking about?" I asked. "Conservatively, $3 to $4 million over the past 15 years, maybe more." I sat with that information for a long time. Richard wasn't just a cheating husband, he was a criminal. And his mother, Barbara, managed the billing for his practice. She had to know. "What should I do with this information?" Gloria was quiet for a moment. "That's not my decision. But if you divorce him, and this comes out later, you could be implicated. Better to come forward first, cooperate with authorities. It'll strengthen your position in divorce proceedings and protect you legally." I hired a lawyer then, Patricia Hayes, 45 years old, one of the best family law attorneys in the state. She reviewed everything, the hidden assets, the fraud evidence, the documentation I'd been gathering for years. "Mrs. Coleman," she said, "you've done exceptional work here. Most clients come to me with nothing. You've built an airtight case. But I need to ask, are you ready for what comes next? Because once we start this process, there's no going back." I thought about 40 years of being invisible, of being controlled, dismissed, diminished, of Barbara's snide comments and Richard's condescension, of the woman I'd been at 26, with dreams and ambition and fire. "I'm ready." "Good, but here's what we're going to do. We wait for Richard to file first." "What? Why?" She smiled. "Because he will. Men like Richard always do. They get tired of their wives, find younger models, decide to upgrade. When he does, he'll feel confident, sloppy. He'll assume you're helpless and unprepared. That's when we strike." So I waited, continued my double life, perfect wife in Glen Haven, independent woman in Lakewood. Continued building my business, my evidence, my escape plan. I didn't have to wait long. The call came on a Tuesday in April. I was 68 years old, sitting in my garden in Lakewood, when my phone rang. The hospice nurse from Alabama. "Mrs. Coleman, it's about your mother. Rosa May has taken a turn. The doctor thinks you should come soon. She's asking for you." My mother, my fierce, strong, complicated mother who'd warned me about Richard 42 years ago, who'd scraped together money to send me to nursing school, who'd told me a dozen times over the years that it wasn't too late to leave, to come home, to choose myself. I drove straight to Glen Haven, packed a bag. Richard was still at the hospital, his real office, not whatever hotel room he was actually in. I left him a voicemail. "My mother is dying. I'm going to Alabama. I'll be back when I can." He called back an hour later as I was driving. "How long will you be gone?" "I don't know, Richard. My mother is dying." "Right, but we have the hospital gala next Saturday. I need you there." I pulled over, sat on the shoulder of the highway, and stared at my phone. "Did you hear what I said?" "I heard. I'm just saying your mother is 92, Dorothy. She's had a good life. There's nothing you can do by sitting in a hospice room. The gala is important for the practice." I hung up, got back on the highway, drove 6 hours to Alabama without stopping. Mama was in a small hospice facility outside Montgomery, in a room overlooking the river where she'd grown up. She looked tiny in the bed, her skin papery, her breathing labored. But when I walked in, her eyes opened, clear, sharp, present. "There's my girl," she whispered. I pulled a chair close, took her hand. It felt like holding a bird. "Hi, Mama." "You came." "Of course I came." "Richard let you?" Despite everything, I laughed. "Richard doesn't get a vote anymore." Something shifted in her face. Relief. Pride. "Good. I was worried I'd die without seeing you stand up." We talked for the next 2 weeks. Not continuously. She'd drift in and out, some days barely conscious, other days surprisingly alert. But when she was awake, we had the conversations we should have had decades ago. She told me about her own marriage, her own compromises, showed me a bank book I'd never known existed, $45,000 she'd saved over 50 years by skimming grocery money, doing hair on the side, collecting aluminum cans. "Every woman needs a escape fund," she said. "I never needed to use mine, thank God, but I want you to have it now." She told me where she'd hidden jewelry, pieces from her grandmother, worth more than I'd imagined. "Get them appraised," she said. "Don't trust what people tell you they're worth." My grandmother was a maid for a wealthy family. They gave her these when they died. Guilt gifts, I always thought. But real diamonds are real diamonds. Most importantly, she made me promise something. "Dorothy May," she said one evening, holding my hand with surprising strength, "promise me you won't die having only lived half a life. You've been drowning yourself to keep Richard afloat. It's time to let him sink and swim to shore yourself." "I promise, Mama. And promise me you won't wait until you're my age to finally be yourself. You're 68. You could have 20, 30 more years. Live them, baby. Live them free." She died 3 days later with me holding her hand, just as the sun rose over the river. I stayed for the funeral, made arrangements. Accepted condolences from people who remembered the girl I'd been before I moved north to become someone else. Richard called once during those 2 weeks. Didn't ask how I was, how the funeral went, if I needed anything. Just, when are you coming back? The house is a disaster. Soon, I said. I settled Mama's estate, the savings, the jewelry, a small property she owned that I could sell. All told, nearly $250,000. I put it all in my secret account. Evened up my loan with Evelyn. Had enough left over to live on for years if I needed to. Then I arranged to fly home a day early. Didn't tell Richard. Just wanted to surprise him, to get home and begin whatever came next. I had no idea he'd already begun it for me. The taxi dropped me at the end of our circular driveway at 3 in the afternoon. It was a beautiful spring day, the kind that made Glen Haven look like a postcard. The magnolias were blooming. The grass was perfectly manicured, and my belongings were scattered across it like garbage. Clothes, books, photos, my grandmother's quilt, my nursing school diploma, 42 years of life dumped on the lawn. I stood there, funeral dress still wrinkled from the plane, luggage in hand, and stared. The front door opened. Richard walked out, arm around a woman I recognized. Angela Carter, the nurse practitioner from his office. She was wearing my bathrobe, the silk one Richard had given me for our 35th anniversary. Behind them, Barbara Coleman, 94 years old and still standing straight, that familiar smile on her face, triumphant. "Dorothy," Richard said as casually as if commenting on the weather. "You're back early." I found my voice. "What is this?" "This is overdue," Barbara answered before Richard could speak. "I told my son 42 years ago that you were a mistake, a phase, someone who would never belong in this family. He's finally come to his senses." Richard had the decency to look uncomfortable, barely. "I filed for divorce 3 days ago. The papers are in that pile somewhere. Our post-nuptial agreement is very clear. You get your personal belongings and $50,000. That should be more than generous, considering you never worked a day in this marriage." The world seemed to tilt. I'd been preparing for this moment for 6 years. Had evidence, lawyers, a house, money. But standing here, in my funeral dress, looking at my life scattered like trash while my husband's mistress wore my clothes, I wasn't prepared for how small it would make me feel. But I'd made a promise to my mother. I set down my luggage, walked across the lawn to the nearest pile of clothes, found the divorce papers, read them quickly. Everything Richard said was there. The post-nuptial agreement I had no memory of signing, the $50,000 settlement, the claim that I'd abandoned my responsibilities, that I'd contributed nothing to the marriage, that I was entitled to nothing. I looked up at the 3 of them on the porch. Angela looked uncomfortable now, tugging the robe closed. Barbara looked delighted. Richard looked impatient. "You have 1 hour," he said, checking his watch. "Take what you can carry. The rest goes to donation pickup tomorrow." "Where am I supposed to go?" Barbara laughed. Actually laughed. "That's hardly our concern, is it? Perhaps you should have thought of that before you spent 2 weeks abandoning your husband." I looked at Richard. The man I'd loved at 26, the man I'd given up everything for, the man whose career I'd supported, whose children I'd raised, whose mother I'd tolerated for 42 years. "Did you wait until my mother died?" I asked quietly. Was that strategic or just convenient? Something flickered across his face. Guilt? Shame? It was gone too quickly to tell. "Dorothy, don't make this harder than it has to be. We both know this marriage has been over for years. I'm offering you a fair settlement." "Fair?" The word came out sharper than I intended. $50,000 for 42 years is fair? You didn't work. You didn't contribute financially. You lived a very comfortable life at my expense." "At your expense?" Now my voice was rising and I couldn't stop it. Years of silence were breaking open. "I raised your children. I managed your household. I networked for your career. I smiled while your mother treated me like hired help. I gave up my nursing career, my friends, my identity." "Oh, please." Barbara's voice was pure contempt. "You gave up a mediocre nursing career for a mansion and a lifestyle you could never have achieved on your own. Don't pretend you're the victim here." I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd spent 42 years making me feel less than. This woman who'd stolen my confidence piece by piece until I'd forgotten I ever had any. And something in me shifted. Not broke. shifted, like a lock turning, a door opening. I smiled. "You're right, Barbara," I said calmly. "I never could have achieved this lifestyle on my own. This house, this zip code, this performance of perfection." I turned to Richard. "I'll take my belongings now. You said I have an hour?" He looked surprised by my calm. "Yes, 1 hour. That's all I need." I started gathering my things, my important documents, birth certificate, nursing license, passport, photo albums, my grandmother's jewelry box, which Richard had carelessly tossed in with old clothes. I worked methodically, ignoring the three of them watching from the porch. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia Hayes, my lawyer. "Joint accounts emptied 30 minutes ago. $347,221 transferred to his personal account. Already filed emergency motion. Don't react." I kept packing. Found my favorite books, my mother's Bible, the quilt my grandmother had made. Things that mattered. A car pulled up. Michael, my son, 41 years old, looking like his father but with my eyes. He got out, stared at the scene before him. "Mom?" His voice was strangled. "What's happening?" "Your father is divorcing me," I said calmly, folding clothes into a suitcase. "Dad?" Michael looked up at the porch. "What the hell?" "This doesn't concern you, Michael," Richard said. "This is between your mother and me." "Doesn't concern me? Mom's stuff is all over the lawn." "Your mother will be fine. She's getting a generous settlement." "Generous?" Michael was shouting now. "You're throwing her out with garbage bags?" "Michael, come inside." Barbara's command was sharp. "Don't let her manipulate you." My son looked between us. I could see the war on his face. Loyalty to his father, love for his mother. I'd seen that look for years. The reason he'd gradually distanced himself, unable to watch, but unable to intervene. "It's okay, baby," I said quietly. "I'll be fine." "Where will you go?" "I have arrangements." Richard laughed from the porch. "Arrangements? Dorothy, you don't have anything. No job, no money, no prospects. Don't be dramatic." I finished packing what I could carry. 3 suitcases full. So much less than 42 years should amount to. But it was enough. I called an Uber. While I waited, I stood in that perfect lawn, surrounded by the wreckage of my life, and felt something unexpected. Relief. The cage door was open. Richard had opened it himself, thinking I had nowhere to fly to. He was wrong. The Uber pulled up. The driver, a young woman, looked at the scene with wide eyes. "You okay, ma'am?" "I will be." I loaded my suitcases into her car. Richard called from the porch. "Dorothy, where are you going?" I looked back at him one last time. This man who thought he'd thrown me away. This man who had no idea what was coming. "I'm going home," I said. Then I got in the car and left my golden cage forever. The Uber driver's name was Jasmine, 24 years old, studying nursing at the community college. We talked during the 30-mile drive to Lakewood, and when I told her I used to be a nurse, her whole face lit up. "That's amazing. Why'd you stop?" I looked out the window at the landscape changing from manicured estates to regular neighborhoods. "I let someone convince me I wasn't needed. Took me 42 years to realize I was wrong." She pulled up to my house on Maple Street. The little craftsman looked exactly as I'd left it 2 weeks ago. Garden blooming, porch swept, window boxes bright with flowers. Home. "This is beautiful," Jasmine said, helping me with my bags. "Thank you. It's mine." The words felt strange and wonderful in my mouth. "Actually mine." I gave her a $50 tip and my phone number. "When you graduate nursing school, call me. I know people who can help." After she left, I stood in my living room and let it wash over me. The silence, the peace, the absolute freedom of being in a space that was entirely my own. Then I called Patricia Hayes. "Dorothy," she answered immediately. "Where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm home, my real home." "Good. Don't go back to Glen Haven. Don't answer Richard's calls. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., my office. We're filing an emergency motion to freeze all assets and contest that fraudulent postnuptial agreement." "How did you know it was fraudulent?" "Because you told me 6 months ago you never signed a postnuptial agreement. Richard just created one, backdated it, and forged your signature. We'll prove it. But Dorothy, I need to know, are you ready for war? Because that's what this will be." I thought about standing on that lawn in my funeral dress, about Barbara's triumphant smile, about Richard's casual cruelty, about 42 years of being made invisible. "I've been ready for 8 years," I said. "I was just waiting for him to fire the first shot." That night I barely slept. Not from anxiety, from anticipation. Everything I'd prepared for was finally happening. At 3 a.m. I got up, made tea, sat at my kitchen table, and reviewed my evidence files. 4 years of documentation, hundreds of photographs, bank statements showing systematic transfers to offshore accounts, property deeds for Meridian Medical Holdings, tax returns with missing income, email correspondence between Richard and Barbara about optimizing revenue streams, and Gloria Patterson's investigation into the billing fraud. That was my nuclear option, the thing I wasn't sure I'd use. At 6 a.m., my doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Michael's car. My heart clenched. I opened the door. My son stood there, looking like he hadn't slept either. "Mom, I had to find you. I called every hotel in 3 counties before I remembered you mentioning volunteering in Lakewood. Took a chance on property records, and this house is yours? Actually yours? Come in, baby." We sat in my kitchen, with the yellow walls I'd painted myself and the table I'd bought at an estate sale. I poured him coffee, waited. "I'm so sorry," he finally said. "For years I've watched Dad treat you like you were nothing, watched Grandma Barbara tear you down. I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere, that you were adults, that you'd work it out." He looked up, tears in his eyes. "But yesterday, seeing your things on the lawn like garbage, Mom, I was a coward." "No, sweetheart, you were caught between your parents. That's not the same thing." "I want to help, whatever you need. I'll testify, Michael," I took his hand. "I need you to understand something. What's about to happen is going to get ugly. Your father has been hiding assets, committing fraud, building an empire on lies. When it all comes out, his reputation will be destroyed. Your grandmother will likely face legal consequences. The family name will be damaged." "Good," he said fiercely. "Let it burn. Think about what you're saying. Your career, your connections, are worth nothing if I let this happen to you." He squeezed my hand. "I'm an architect, Mom. I build things. I can rebuild a reputation. What I can't rebuild is my integrity if I stand by and let Dad do this." I cried then. First time since Mama died. My son wrapped his arms around me, and I let myself be held. "There's something else," he said when I'd composed myself. "Jennifer called me last night. My daughter, who'd taken Barbara's side for years, who'd told me I was too sensitive about Grandma's comments, who'd distanced herself because my presence made family gatherings tense. What did she say?" "She's confused, upset. She saw Dad with Angela at the house yesterday after you left. Saw how they were together." He paused. "She said Angela is wearing your jewelry, that diamond bracelet Dad gave you for your 60th birthday." Something cold settled in my chest. That bracelet had been a rare, thoughtful gift. Or so I'd thought. Now it was just another thing Richard had given away, like I'd never mattered at all. "Jennifer's not ready to take sides," Michael continued, "but she's starting to see. Give her time." I nodded. Some children needed to come to truth slowly. That was okay. I'd waited 8 years. I could wait a little longer. Patricia Hayes' office was in a high-rise downtown, all glass and steel and serious money. Her conference room overlooked the city, and she'd assembled a team. Herself, a forensic accountant named David Chen, and Gloria Patterson. "Let's start with what we know," Patricia said, spreading documents across the table. "Richard filed for divorce, claiming you abandoned the marriage and contributed nothing financially. He's presenting a post-nuptial agreement that allegedly entitles you to only $50,000. David Chen, a thin man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses, opened his laptop. "I've reviewed the agreement. The signature is clearly forged. Pressure points don't match your verified signatures, and the date stamp on the PDF shows it was created 3 months ago, not 10 years ago as claimed." "So we can prove it's fake?" "Absolutely, but that's just the beginning." He pulled up a spreadsheet. "Based on the documentation you've provided, I've traced the following assets purchased or funded during your marriage. Primary residence, Glen Haven Estates, valued at $2.4 million. 3 commercial properties owned by Meridian Medical Holdings, LLC, office building on Lancaster Avenue, valued at $3.2 million, retail space on 5th Street, valued at $2.8 million, medical plaza on Riverside, valued at $2.9 million. Total, $8.9 million. Offshore accounts in Cayman Islands, $4.2 million. Vacation property in Aspen, Colorado, registered to Barbara Coleman but purchased with funds traced to Richard's medical practice, $1.8 million. Various investment accounts, retirement funds, and liquid assets, approximately $3.1 million. He looked up. Total marital assets, approximately $22.4 million. Richard disclosed $2.1 million in his divorce filing. The number hung in the air, $22.4 million. I'd known Richard was hiding money, but this? He's hidden $20 million? My voice sounded distant. Not just hidden it, Gloria said. He's been systematically moving it for years. The offshore accounts show regular transfers starting in 2012. The Meridian holdings were established in 2015. The Aspen property was purchased in 2018. He's been planning this for over a decade. Patricia leaned forward. Dorothy, this is financial abuse on a massive scale. In this state, you're entitled to 50% of all marital assets, $11.2 million, not $50,000. But here's the critical question. Do you want to just win the divorce, or do you want justice? What's the difference? Winning the divorce means exposing the hidden assets, getting your legal share, and walking away. Justice means reporting the Medicare fraud, the insurance fraud, the tax evasion. That's criminal prosecution. Richard would face federal charges, potentially decades in prison. I thought about the evidence Gloria had shown me months ago. Patients billed for surgeries they never had. Upcoding procedures to maximize insurance payouts. Using Medicare numbers for procedures Richard never performed. How many patients? I asked. Gloria pulled out another file. We've documented at least 200 instances over 15 years. Conservative estimate, $3.8 million in fraudulent billing. Those are real people. People who trusted him with their health, their insurance. Some of them probably couldn't afford their premiums going up. Yes, Patricia said quietly. And if you report it, they'll be notified. Some may file civil suits. Richard's medical license will be revoked. His reputation will be destroyed. I stood, walked to the window, looked out at the city where I'd lived for 42 years, where I'd been invisible, where Richard had built his empire on lies while I'd shrunk myself to fit in his shadow. My mother made me promise not to live half a life anymore, I said. Not to drown myself to keep someone else afloat. If I stay quiet about the fraud to make the divorce easier, I'm still choosing his comfort over doing what's right. I turned back to them. File everything. The divorce contest, the asset freeze, and a report to the relevant authorities about the fraud. All of it. Patricia smiled. That's what I was hoping you'd say. The emergency hearing was scheduled for Friday morning, 3 days after Richard had thrown me out. I arrived at the courthouse with Patricia, wearing a navy suit I'd bought for my bookkeeping business. Simple, professional, myself. Richard was there with his attorney, William Ashford. Expensive suit, expensive watch, expensive smile. Barbara sat behind them, perfectly coiffed as always. Then Richard saw me, really saw me, and something flickered across his face. Confusion. This wasn't the broken, helpless woman he'd expected. All rise for the Honorable Judge Linda Morrison. The judge was a black woman in her late 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes. I'd done my research. Judge Morrison had a reputation for not tolerating deception in her courtroom. William Ashford spoke first, all confident dismissal. Your Honor, this emergency motion is a transparent attempt by Mrs. Coleman to delay inevitable proceedings. My client has been more than generous. Mr. Ashford, Judge Morrison interrupted. I've reviewed the preliminary filings. Your client disclosed $2.1 million in assets. Mrs. Coleman's forensic accountant has documented over $20 million. Would you care to explain that discrepancy? Ashford faltered. Your Honor, those are alleged assets. Unverified. They're verified, Patricia said, standing. We have property deeds, bank statements, tax documents, and electronic trails, all entered as Exhibits A through M. Judge Morrison looked at Richard. Dr. Coleman, did you or did you not purchase 3 commercial properties through an LLC registered to your mother during your marriage? Richard shifted in his seat. Those were investments made through my medical practice, with income earned during your marriage, making them marital assets. Did you disclose them in your divorce filing? Silence. Dr. Coleman, I asked you a question. No, Your Honor. I did not disclose them because you were attempting to hide them from your wife. The judge's voice was ice. And this post-nuptial agreement you submitted, allegedly signed 10 years ago, Mrs. Coleman's attorney has provided evidence it was created 3 months ago with a forged signature. Care to address that? William Ashford stood quickly. Your Honor, we'll need time to investigate these allegations. You'll have time, but not with access to marital funds. Judge Morrison's gavel came down. I'm issuing an immediate freeze on all accounts and assets associated with Dr. Coleman pending full disclosure and forensic accounting. I'm appointing a special master to investigate the full extent of marital property. And Dr. Coleman, if I find you've been systematically defrauding this court and your wife, you'll face consequences beyond divorce proceedings. Do I make myself clear? Yes, Your Honor, Richard said quietly. Mrs. Coleman is awarded temporary spousal support of $8,000 per month, effective immediately. Dr. Coleman is barred from selling, transferring, or encumbering any assets. This court is adjourned until the special master completes their investigation. As we left the courtroom, I heard Richard hiss at his lawyer. How did she know? How did she find all of this? I didn't look back, but I smiled. Word spread through Glen Haven like wildfire. The perfect Dr. Coleman, caught hiding $20 million from his wife. The scandal was delicious, and I wasn't there to witness it, which somehow made it better. But Evelyn Washington was. She called me that evening, barely containing her glee. Dorothy, honey, you should see it. The country club is in chaos. Half the wives are checking their own husband's finances. Barbara hasn't been seen in public since the hearing. And Richard, she laughed. Richard tried to play golf yesterday and got asked to leave. Apparently, membership requires full financial disclosure, and the board isn't sure he can be trusted anymore. How do you know all this? Because I went to the club specifically to watch, brought popcorn and everything. Patricia Morrison, no relation to the judge, but they did compare notes, told me Richard showed up looking like he hadn't slept in days. Tried to act like everything was normal. Got pulled aside by the membership committee and politely told to take a leave of absence until his legal matters were resolved. I felt a flicker of something. Not quite satisfaction. Not quite pity. Something in between. You sound almost sorry for him, Evelyn said, reading my silence. I'm not sorry, it's been 42 years. Part of me still remembers the man I thought I married. That man was never real, Dorothy. You know that now. She was right, but knowing didn't make it hurt less. The real chaos came 2 days later when Gloria Patterson delivered news I'd been dreading and expecting in equal measure. The FBI has opened an investigation, she said, sitting in my living room in Lakewood. Medicare fraud, insurance fraud, potential RICO charges. They want to interview you. When? Tomorrow. But Dorothy, there's something else. She pulled out her tablet, showed me a news article. Richard's not the only one they're looking at. The headline read, Prominent surgeon and mother under investigation for systematic healthcare fraud. Barbara. They were investigating Barbara, too. She managed his billing, Gloria explained. Has for 20 years. There's no way she didn't know about the upcoding, the phantom procedures. She might have been helping orchestrate it. My mother-in-law, 94 years old, facing federal charges. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt tired. What happens now? You cooperate fully. Tell them everything you know. Provide all documentation. They'll likely offer you immunity in exchange for testimony. Richard and Barbara will probably try to negotiate plea deals. And if they don't? Trial, prison, loss of medical license, financial ruin, the whole thing. I sat with that for a long moment. This was what I'd chosen when I'd decided to report the fraud. Justice, not just victory, but justice was messier than I'd imagined. There's one more thing, Gloria said. Angela Carter contacted me. The mistress, the woman who'd worn my robe on my porch. What did she want? To talk to you. Absolutely not. Dorothy, I think you should hear what she has to say. We met at a coffee shop in neutral territory. Angela Carter arrived looking nothing like the confident woman I'd seen with Richard. She was thin, nervous, with dark circles under her eyes. Mrs. Coleman, she started, then stopped. Dorothy, I don't know what to say. Then maybe don't say anything. She flinched. I deserve that. I deserve worse. But I need you to know. I didn't know. About the fraud, about the hidden money, about any of it. Richard told me you'd been separated for years, that you were just waiting to file papers, that you'd both moved on. And you believed him? I wanted to believe him. He was charming, successful, attentive. Everything I thought I wanted. She looked up, and I saw genuine pain in her eyes. And then after you left, after he moved me into the house, everything changed. He started controlling where I went, who I talked to, checking my phone, getting angry if I questioned anything. Last week, he threw a glass at the wall because I suggested ordering takeout instead of cooking. I knew that pattern, had lived it for 40 years. Why are you telling me this? Because I found something I think you should see. She pulled a phone from her purse. Richard's second phone, the one he thinks I don't know about. The passcode is your birthday, December 15th. She slid it across the table. Why give this to me? Angela's voice cracked. Because I'm 28 years old and I saw my future in your eyes on that lawn. 40 more years of shrinking, of being controlled, of losing myself. And I thought, if you could escape at 68, maybe I can escape now. I took the phone, unlocked it, started scrolling. What I found made my blood run cold. The contents of Richard's second phone changed everything. Text messages with Barbara, going back years. Barbara, the Alabama property closed. $1.2 million transferred to the Cayman account. Dorothy none the wiser. Richard, perfect. How much are we up to now? Barbara, offshore accounts total $4.2 million. Another 10 years and we can phase her out comfortably. That was from 2015, 13 years into our marriage. They'd been planning to discard me for a decade, but the texts got worse. Richard, Dorothy's asking questions about Meridian Holdings. Barbara, shut it down. Tell her it's medical investment she wouldn't understand. She's not smart enough to push. Richard, she saw the Aspen property deed. Barbara, I'll handle it. I'll tell her it's mine, inheritance from her father. She won't dare question me. They'd been so certain I was too stupid, too intimidated, too broken to fight back. Then there were the emails about the billing fraud, detailed instructions from Barbara about how to maximize insurance reimbursement, codes to use for procedures that were never performed, patient information used for phantom billing, and most damning, recent texts between Richard and William Ashford, his attorney. Richard, how do we make sure Dorothy gets nothing? Ashford, create a postnuptial agreement, backdate it, forge her signature. In court, claims she signed it years ago but forgot. She has no documentation skills, no legal knowledge. She won't be able to prove otherwise. Richard, and if she fights it? Ashford, she won't. She has no money, no resources, no support system. She'll take the $50,000 and disappear. Richard, you're sure? Ashford, I've seen women like her 1,000 times. Sheltered, dependent, invisible. They always take the settlement. I read those texts 3 times, each time feeling my resolve strengthen. They'd underestimated me completely, and that was going to be their downfall. I called Patricia immediately. She arrived at my house within an hour, Gloria with her. This is it, Patricia said, scrolling through the phone. This is everything we need. Conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, systematic theft of marital assets. And Dorothy, she looked up. This implicates his attorney. William Ashford knew about the forged postnuptial agreement. He helped create it. What does that mean? It means Ashford will be disbarred. It means Richard's legal defense just collapsed. And it means we have them all. Gloria was more cautious. We need to turn this over to the FBI. It's evidence in a federal investigation. But Dorothy, once we do, there's no going back. Richard, Barbara, Ashford, they all go down. I thought about Barbara's smug face on the porch, about Richard's casual cruelty, about 42 years of being told I was less than, worth nothing, invisible. Turn it over, I said. All of it. The next 3 weeks were a blur. The FBI investigation accelerated. Search warrants were executed at Richard's office, our former home, Barbara's residence. News vans camped outside Glen Haven Estates. Headlines screamed, "Prominent surgeon charged with Medicare fraud," and "Society mother-in-law faces federal charges." Richard tried to call me 17 times. I didn't answer. His voicemails progressed from angry to desperate. Dorothy, this is ridiculous. Call me back. You're destroying everything over a misunderstanding. We can work this out. My attorney says you have my phone. That's theft. Return it immediately or face charges. Please, Dorothy, please. My career is over. My reputation is destroyed. Haven't you punished me enough? I saved every message. Evidence of his state of mind. Barbara's response was different. She hired her own attorney, immediately threw Richard under the bus, claimed she was just following her son's instructions, that she didn't understand medical billing, that she was a confused elderly woman being manipulated. The FBI didn't buy it. The emails were too detailed, too calculating. Barbara Coleman had been a willing participant in every crime. Jennifer finally called me on a Wednesday evening, 3 weeks after I'd left Glen Haven. Mom? Her voice was small, young. Can we talk? We met at a park halfway between Lakewood and her home. My daughter, 38 years old, looked exhausted. I'm sorry, she said immediately, for everything. For taking Grandma's side, for not seeing what Dad was doing to you, for not being there when you needed me. Jennifer, no, let me finish. I saw Angela at the house last week. She was wearing your jewelry, living in your home. And I realized that could have been me. If I'd married someone like Dad, I could have ended up exactly where you did. And you escaped. At 68, you escaped. I pulled my daughter into my arms. It's never too late to choose yourself. Teach me, she whispered. Teach me how to be like you, how to be strong. Oh, baby, I'm not strong. I'm just stubborn and tired of being small. We sat on that park bench for 2 hours, talking like we hadn't in years. She told me about problems in her own marriage. Not abuse, but control, dismissiveness, the slow erosion of self. I told her about Evelyn, about learning to build a life in secret, about the moment I decided I deserved more. Mom, she said finally, whatever happens at trial, I'm on your side. Publicly. I'm going to testify if they need me to. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. For you. And for myself. 4 weeks after Richard threw my belongings on the lawn, I sat in Patricia's office reviewing the final divorce settlement proposal. Richard, facing federal charges and financial ruin, had finally agreed to negotiate. His new attorney, the 5th one, after Ashford was disbarred and 3 others quit, had sent over terms. They're offering you 60% of documented marital assets, Patricia said, approximately $13.4 million, plus the Glen Haven house, which you can sell, plus Richard pays all your legal fees. And in exchange? You don't testify against him in the fraud case. You sign a non-disclosure agreement about the marriage. I laughed, actually laughed. He still thinks he can control the narrative. The FBI doesn't need your testimony to convict him. They have the phone records, the documents, everything. But your testimony would make it airtight. Life sentence instead of 10 to 15 years. I looked out Patricia's window at the city below, thought about justice versus mercy, about punishment versus healing. I'll take the 60%, I said. I'll take the house, but no NDA, and I reserve the right to testify if subpoenaed. He doesn't get to silence me ever again. Patricia grinned. I was hoping you'd say that. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning. Judge Morrison presided, and her final words stuck with me. Mrs. Coleman, in 40 years of practicing law, I've seen too many women like you, intelligent, capable women who were systematically erased by their partners. I'm gratified to see you not only survived, but prevailed. You've set an example for every woman who thinks it's too late to reclaim her life. Richard sat at his table, diminished. He'd lost 20 pounds, his hair had gone completely gray, and he looked every one of his 70 years. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, he stood. Dorothy, he said, not looking at his attorney, not reading from notes, I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. I took your trust, your youth, your loyalty, and I threw them away because I was too arrogant to see their value. I'm sorry. It was too little, too late, but it was something. I stood too. Richard, I forgive you, not for you, for me, because I refuse to carry the weight of your choices anymore. And then I walked out of that courtroom a free woman. That evening, I sat on my porch in Lakewood with Evelyn, Gloria, and Patricia. We drank wine and watched the sunset. What's next? Evelyn asked. You've got money, time, freedom. The world is yours. I thought about it, about the years ahead, about the woman I'd been and the woman I'd become. I'm going to help people, I said. Women like me who think it's too late. I'm going to start a foundation, teach financial literacy, show them how to document assets, build escape plans, find their power. The Rosa May Foundation, Patricia said. After your mother. Yes, after my mother, who saved for 60 years just in case. After Evelyn, who taught me it's never too late. After every woman who's ever been told she's too old, too dependent, too invisible to matter. Gloria raised her glass. To Dorothy Mae Johnson, who proved that being underestimated is the greatest strategic advantage of all. We toasted as the sun set over Lakewood, over my garden, over my life, and for the first time in 42 years, I went to sleep with no one to answer to but myself. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, the federal trial began. United States versus Richard Coleman and Barbara Coleman. 47 counts of Medicare fraud, insurance fraud, mail fraud, and conspiracy. I wasn't required to testify. The FBI had built their case on documents, digital evidence, and witness testimony from Richard's former employees. But I chose to attend. Not for revenge. For closure. The courthouse was packed. Media crews lined the steps. Former patients who'd been defrauded sat in the gallery, some in wheelchairs, some on oxygen. Real people whose insurance premiums had skyrocketed because of Richard's greed. Richard had aged another decade in 6 months. He sat at the defense table in a suit that hung loose on his frame, staring straight ahead. Barbara, 94 years old, sat separately with her own attorney. She'd tried the confused elderly woman defense, but prosecutors had emails proving she'd masterminded much of the billing scheme. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I attended every day, sitting in the back row with Evelyn beside me. You don't have to keep coming, she whispered during week 2. You've already won. I need to see it through, I said. I need to witness the truth being told. The most devastating testimony came from Dr. James Peterson, Richard's former partner at the medical practice. He was 58, gray-haired, and clearly conflicted about testifying. Dr. Peterson, the prosecutor asked, when did you first become aware of billing irregularities? Around 2015. I noticed we were billing for procedures I hadn't performed. When I asked Richard about it, he said it was revenue optimization and that I should mind my own business. What happened when you pressed the issue? Peterson's voice dropped. He threatened me, said if I reported anything, he'd make sure I lost my medical license. He had connections on the state medical board. I believed him. So you stayed silent? Yes, and I've regretted it every day since. Richard stared at the table, expressionless. But I saw his hands shaking. The prosecutor presented evidence. Billing records showing $3.8 million in fraudulent charges over 15 years. Phantom surgeries. Upcoded procedures. Medicare numbers used for patients who didn't exist. And who managed the billing department? The prosecutor asked. Barbara Coleman, Richard's mother. Barbara's attorney objected, but the emails were clear. She'd been an active, willing participant. On the 14th day of trial, the prosecution called an unexpected witness, Angela Carter. She walked to the stand in a simple blue dress, hands trembling. Richard's eyes followed her, and for a moment I saw something in his face. Fear, maybe, or betrayal. How it felt to be blindsided by someone you'd trusted. Ms. Carter, the prosecutor began, what was your relationship with Dr. Coleman? I was his employee, and his girlfriend, for 3 years. And during that time, did he discuss his medical practice with you? Sometimes. He complained about insurance companies not paying enough, said he had to work the system to get what he deserved. Did he ever specifically describe fraudulent billing practices? Angela looked directly at Richard. Yes, he told me he billed for complex procedures, but performed simple ones. Said the patients never knew the difference, and insurance companies had too much money anyway. Did you report this? Her voice broke. No, I was afraid. He was powerful. I was nobody. The prosecutor's tone softened. What changed? I met Dorothy Coleman, his ex-wife, the woman I helped hurt. And I realized if I didn't speak up, I was just as guilty as he was. After Angela stepped down, court recessed. I found her in the hallway, sitting alone on a bench. "Thank you," I said. She looked up, surprised. "For what? I helped destroy your marriage." "No. Richard destroyed our marriage long before you, but you helped bring the truth to light. That took courage." "Dorothy, I don't deserve your kindness." I sat beside her. "Maybe not, but I'm giving it anyway, because carrying anger is exhausting, and I'm choosing peace." She cried then, and I let her. 2 women Richard had tried to use, sitting together in the aftermath of his destruction. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. When they returned, the courtroom was silent. "On count 1, Medicare fraud, how do you find?" "Guilty." "On count 2, insurance fraud, how do you find?" "Guilty, guilty, guilty, guilty," 47 times. Richard's face crumbled. Barbara made a sound, half gasp, half sob. Their attorneys immediately requested leniency hearings. Judge Harold Martinez, a stern man in his 60s, addressed the defendants. "Dr. Coleman, Mrs. Coleman, you systematically defrauded the healthcare system for over 15 years. You stole from insurance companies, from Medicare, from patients who trusted you with their care. You did this not out of need, but out of greed." He paused, looking at the packed courtroom. "The victims of your crimes are here today. Real people whose premiums increased, whose coverage was denied, who suffered because you decided you deserved more than you'd earned honestly." Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Richard and Barbara were both remanded to custody, bail revoked. As marshals led Richard away, he looked back at me. Our eyes met across the courtroom. I saw everything in that look. Regret, shame, the weight of choices that couldn't be undone. I didn't look away, but I didn't smile either. This wasn't victory. It was just the truth, finally told. The sentencing hearing was smaller, quieter. Most of the media had moved on to newer scandals. But the victims were there. Patients, former employees, people whose lives Richard had affected. The prosecution requested 20 to 30 years for Richard, 15 to 20 for Barbara. Richard's attorney presented mitigating factors: his decades of medical service, his charitable contributions, his age and declining health. Then the judge allowed victim impact statements. Mrs. Eleanor Harris, 73, stood with her walker. "Dr. Coleman performed my hip replacement in 2018. He billed my insurance for a complex revision surgery, $47,000. What he actually did was a simple replacement, maybe $12,000. My insurance denied my next surgery because I'd hit my lifetime maximum. I lived in pain for 2 years before I could afford to pay out of pocket." Mr. James Wu, 65. "I trusted Dr. Coleman with my wife's spine surgery. He billed for a 4-level fusion. He performed a 2-level. My wife still has chronic pain. When we questioned the billing, he said we were confused, made us feel stupid for asking." 7 patients spoke, each one a life damaged by Richard's greed. Then the judge asked if I wanted to make a statement. Patricia looked at me. "You don't have to." But I did. I stood, walked to the podium, and faced Richard for what I knew would be the last time. "Your Honor, my name is Dorothy Mae Johnson. I was married to Richard Coleman for 42 years. I'm not here to talk about the fraud, though it matters. I'm here to talk about a different kind of theft. Richard didn't just steal money from insurance companies. He stole years from me. He stole my career when he convinced me to quit nursing. He stole my confidence when he told me I wasn't smart enough to understand finances. He stole my identity when he isolated me from friends and family. He stole my sense of worth when he spent 42 years making me feel invisible. I stood on a lawn 6 months ago, my belongings scattered like garbage, and realized I'd been robbed more thoroughly than any of his patients. Not of money, of myself. But here's what Richard didn't understand. You can't steal what someone chooses to give back. And at 68 years old, I chose to take back my life. I don't hate him. Hate requires caring, and I simply don't anymore. But I do have one thing to say. I looked directly at Richard. You thought I was too old, too dependent, too broken to fight back. You underestimated me. That was your fatal mistake. Every woman you thought was invisible, your wife, your mistress, your female employees, your female patients, we all saw you clearly. And in the end, we're the ones who brought the truth to light. I hope prison gives you time to understand that the people you dismiss are often the most dangerous. Not because we're cruel, but because we're underestimated. Thank you, Your Honor. The courtroom was silent as I returned to my seat. Richard's shoulders shook. I couldn't tell if he was crying or just breathing hard. Judge Martinez spoke. Dr. Coleman, please stand. Richard stood, leaning heavily on the defense table. You've heard from your victims. You've heard from your ex-wife. I've reviewed your case extensively. While I acknowledge your age and medical contributions, the scope and duration of your crimes demand significant consequences. On counts 1 through 37, I sentence you to 8 years in federal prison, to run concurrently. Upon release, you will be on supervised probation for 5 years. You will pay restitution totaling $3.8 million to affected insurance companies and patients. Your medical license is permanently revoked. 8 years. Richard would be 78 when released, if he survived. Mrs. Coleman, please stand. Barbara rose slowly, her attorney supporting her elbow. Mrs. Coleman, as co-conspirator and billing manager, you enabled these crimes for 15 years. However, given your age and declining health, I sentence you to 3 years house arrest, followed by 5 years probation. You will pay restitution jointly with your son. All assets from Meridian Medical Holdings will be liquidated to fund these payments. Barbara's face was white. House arrest meant losing everything: her social standing, her country club, her reputation. For a woman who'd spent 94 years cultivating an image of perfection, it was its own kind of prison. The gavel fell. It was over. 1 year later, the headline in the business section was small, easy to miss. New foundation supports women escaping financial abuse. I smiled, folding the newspaper on my kitchen table. The Rosa May Foundation had launched 3 months ago, and we'd already helped 47 women build escape plans, document assets, and find their independence. My doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Jennifer's car, and beside it, Michael's truck. Sunday dinner. A new tradition we'd started 6 months ago. Mom, Jennifer called, carrying a casserole dish. Behind her, Michael held a squirming toddler, my grandson, Thomas. They'd named him after Richard, before everything fell apart. Jennifer wanted to change it, but I told her the name wasn't cursed. It was just a name. Grandma Dorothy! 3-year-old Thomas launched himself at me. I caught him, breathing in his little boy's smell, apple juice and sunshine. Hey, baby, did you bring me a picture? He pulled a crumpled drawing from his pocket. I drew your house, with the garden. It was mostly scribbles, but I could see the house, the flowers, the life I'd built. It's perfect, I said, hanging it on my refrigerator next to the others. We ate together, my children, my grandson, Evelyn from next door, Patricia Hayes, who'd become a friend beyond being my lawyer. Gloria Patterson brought wine. We laughed, told stories, argued about politics. This was what freedom looked like. After dinner, Jennifer helped me with dishes. Through the window, we watched Michael push Thomas on the swing set I'd installed in the backyard. Mom, Jennifer said quietly, I'm leaving Marcus. I set down the plate I was drying. Are you okay? Yeah, I am. He's not abusive like Dad was to you, but he's dismissive, controlling in small ways, and I realized I don't want to wake up in 20 years having disappeared into someone else's life. What do you need? Advice. You documented everything with Dad. How did you do it without him knowing? I smiled. My daughter, learning to protect herself before it was too late. Let me show you. We spent 2 hours at my kitchen table. I taught her how to photograph documents, how to track assets, how to build a separate financial identity. The same lessons Evelyn had taught me. You're doing this at 38, I said. I waited until 60. You're so much braver than I was. No, Mom. I'm just learning from the bravest woman I know. Richard wrote to me once a month from federal prison. I didn't reply, but I read the letters, watched his evolution through words on paper. Month 2. Dorothy, this is a mistake. I'm appealing. My attorney says we have grounds. I'll be out within a year. Month 5. I've been thinking about what you said at sentencing, about stealing your identity. I didn't see it that way at the time, but you were right. I'm sorry. Month 9. Angela visited today. She's in nursing school now. Says you helped her apply. Why would you help her after what we did to you? Month 12. I've been attending a program here for men with narcissistic tendencies. The counselor asked me to list people I'd hurt. I filled 3 pages and only got through the first 5 years of our marriage. The letters weren't asking for forgiveness. They were documenting his slow awakening to what he'd done. I kept them in a box, a record of accountability. 18 months after leaving Glen Haven, the Rosa May Foundation had expanded beyond anything I'd imagined. We had an office downtown, 3 full-time staff members and a dozen volunteers. We offered workshops on financial literacy, legal rights, documentation strategies. We provided emergency grants to women building escape funds. We connected clients with vetted lawyers, accountants, therapists, and we'd helped 127 women take the first steps toward freedom. I was in the office on a Tuesday when a woman walked in, mid-40s, well-dressed, expensive handbag. The kind of woman who looked like she had everything. "Can I help you?" I asked. I'm not sure. I saw your website. I think I need help, but I'm not sure I qualify. My husband hasn't hit me or anything. He just controls everything. The money, the house, where I go, who I see. And I'm 43 years old, and I realized I don't know who I am anymore. I guided her to a chair. "Tell me your story." She did, and it sounded so familiar. The gradual erosion, the isolation, the financial dependence disguised as being taken care of. A golden cage. "You do qualify," I said when she finished, "because financial abuse is abuse, even without bruises, and it's never too late to reclaim yourself." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm 43. I haven't worked in 15 years. How would I even start?" I smiled, thinking of myself at 60, sitting in Evelyn's kitchen, asking the same question. One small step at a time, and you don't have to do it alone. The call came on a cold November morning. Michael's voice was tight. "Mom, it's Grandma Barbara. She had a stroke. She's in hospice." I hadn't seen Barbara since the sentencing. She'd been under house arrest, her assets liquidated for restitution. From what I heard through the Glen Haven gossip chain Evelyn maintained, she'd become a recluse. "Do you want me there?" I asked. "Would you? I know she was terrible to you, but she's my grandmother, and she's asking for you." I drove to the hospice facility that afternoon. Barbara was in a private room, diminished by illness. At 95, she looked ancient, fragile, nothing like the formidable woman who'd spent 42 years trying to break me. "Dorothy," she whispered when I entered. Her voice was weak, slurred from the stroke. "I'm here, Barbara. I need to tell you," she struggled with the words. "I was wrong. About you. All of it." I pulled a chair close. "Why did you hate me so much?" Tears leaked from her eyes. "Because you were everything I wasn't. Strong, independent. You had a career, purpose. I'd spent my whole life being ornamental. When Richard brought you home, I saw my own wasted life reflected back. So I tried to break you, make you as small as I felt. Did it work? For a while. But you escaped. You became exactly who you were meant to be." She coughed, struggled for breath. "I spent 95 years being afraid. Afraid to work, to have my own money, to be anything more than someone's wife, someone's mother. And I destroyed everyone around me because of that fear. Barbara, let me finish. I'm dying, and I need to say this. You were the daughter-in-law I needed, the example I was too proud to learn from. And I'm sorry. For all of it." I sat with her for 3 hours, held her hand as her breathing slowed. When she died, just before sunset, I was the only one in the room. I cried, not for what Barbara had been, but for what she could have been. Another woman trapped in a golden cage of her own making who'd never found the courage to open the door. 2 years after everything fell apart, I received an unexpected invitation. Memorial Hospital was hosting a reunion for nursing alumni, a celebration of women who'd served in healthcare over the past 50 years. I almost didn't go. That life felt like someone else's story, but something pulled me. The event was in the hospital's grand ballroom. I wore a simple black dress and my mother's pearls. As I walked in, I saw familiar faces, aged, changed, but recognizable. "Dorothy? Dorothy Mae Harrison?" A woman approached, silver-haired and smiling. "It's Shanice Williams. We were in the same nursing class." I remembered her. We'd studied together, pulled double shifts, dreamed about the difference we'd make. "Shanice, how are you?" "Retired now, but I spent 35 years in pediatric oncology. You?" I lost track of you after you married that doctor." Before I could answer, another voice joined us. "Dorothy May!" Keisha appeared, pulling me into a hug. "There you are. I've been looking for you." The evening became a tapestry of reconnection. Women who'd known me before Richard, before I disappeared into being a doctor's wife. Women who'd had careers, made differences, lived full lives. "Whatever happened to nursing?" Shanice asked. "You were so talented." "I gave it up," I said. "Got married, had kids, the usual story." "But you're back now?" Keisha asked knowingly. "In a way. I run a foundation now. Help women escape financial abuse. It's not nursing, but it's healing of a different kind." An announcement came over the speakers. The hospital was honoring outstanding alumni. Names were called, achievements listed. Then, "And finally, we'd like to recognize Dorothy May Johnson, formerly Harrison. Dorothy left nursing in 1984 to raise her family, but recently returned to service through the Rosa May Foundation, which has helped over 200 women escape abusive financial situations. Dorothy, would you come up?" I stood, shocked, walked to the stage in a daze. The hospital administrator, a woman in her 50s, handed me a plaque. "Mrs. Johnson, nursing takes many forms. You've been healing people your entire life, even when you didn't have the title. Welcome home." The room applauded. I looked out at these women, nurses, healers, fighters, and realized I'd never really left. I'd just been healing myself first. 3 years after Richard threw my belongings on a lawn, I stood in that same yard. But everything was different. The house had sold to a young family, a doctor and his wife, who was also a doctor. Equal partners. I'd watched them tour the property, watched the wife's eyes light up at the home office, the way she'd said, "This room is perfect for my practice." They'd invited me to a garden party, a housewarming, a fresh start. The lawn where I'd been humiliated now held tables of food, children playing, laughter. "Mrs. Johnson?" The new owner, Dr. Sarah Lynn, approached. "Thank you for coming. I wanted to ask, the neighbors told me what happened here, with your ex-husband. I hope being here doesn't bring back painful memories." "No," I said, looking around the transformed space. "This place doesn't hold power over me anymore. It's just a house. What you do with it, the love you put here, that's what matters now." She smiled. "I'm glad. And I wanted you to know, several women from the neighborhood have reached out about your foundation. They want to volunteer, to donate. What you're doing is important." I watched children play on the lawn, watched couples chat and laugh. This house had been my prison. Now it was someone else's home. The cycle was broken. I'm 71 years old now, 3 years since my life shattered and reformed into something I never imagined. Richard is in prison, 5 years left on his sentence. His letters have become philosophical, remorseful. I still don't reply, but I've stopped reading them with anger. Now I just feel sad for the man who had everything and threw it away because he couldn't see what everything actually meant. Barbara's estate, what little remained, went to charity. She'd specified in her will, to women's organizations supporting financial independence. Even in death, she was trying to undo the damage she'd done in life. Angela Carter graduated nursing school last month. She works in hospice care now, she tells me, helping people face their endings with dignity. She volunteers with the foundation on weekends. We're not friends, there's too much history, but we're something, allies maybe, women who survived the same storm. Jennifer finalized her divorce. She's living in a small apartment, working as a part-time consultant, figuring out who she is outside of marriage. Some days she calls me crying. Some days she calls me celebrating. All days she's choosing herself. Michael opened his own architecture firm. He designed the new offices for the Rosa May Foundation. Beautiful, functional, with a wall of windows that let in light. "Everyone who comes here should see possibility," he said. "Should see they're not in darkness anymore." The foundation has helped 347 women now. Some leave abusive marriages. Some just learn to build their own financial security. All of them learn they're not invisible. I'm sitting on my porch in Lakewood as I record this story. The garden is in full bloom. Roses, lavender, herbs I use for cooking. Evelyn is coming for dinner. Gloria's bringing wine. Patricia might stop by after court. This is my life now. Small, quiet, mine. People ask me if I regret the 42 years I lost with Richard. Here's what I tell them. I don't think of them as lost. I think of them as the foundation I was building, even when I didn't know it. Every skill I learned managing a household translated to managing a foundation. Every year of being dismissed taught me to see the dismissed. Every moment of invisibility taught me to value the invisible. Would I have chosen this path? No, but I'm not sorry it led me here. At 68, I learned that it's never too late to become who you were meant to be. That quiet strength is often more powerful than loud revenge. That the greatest victory isn't destroying your enemies, it's building a life so full they become irrelevant. I learned that being underestimated is a gift if you're smart enough to use it. Most importantly, I learned that a golden cage is still a cage, and no amount of gilding makes it worth staying locked inside. My name is Dorothy Mae Johnson. I'm 71 years old. For 42 years, I lived in a beautiful prison. For 3 years, I've been free. And every single day of freedom is worth every single year of captivity. The door was always unlocked. I just had to be brave enough to open it. If you're reading this from your own golden cage, here's what I want you to know. You're not too old. You're not too dependent. You're not too far gone. You're exactly the right age to begin again. The world is waiting for you to remember who you are. So stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for the right time. Stop waiting for someone to save you. Save yourself. The rest of us are already free, and we're waiting to welcome you home.